We are living through the strongest El Niño ever recorded for the month of July. Meanwhile, 10 to 20 inches of isolated rainfall are now possible across south-central Texas. And by July 21st, Arctic air could crash the East Coast 20 to 30 degrees below normal. NWS Austin and San Antonio just issued a flood watch for large portions of south-central Texas because counties from Bear and Travis all the way west to Valverde and Kinney are included, which means San Antonio and Austin sit inside a life-threatening flooding setup right now. And the impacts described in this watch are not routine. The word catastrophic appears explicitly because along US 90 west of San Antonio, isolated storm totals of 10 to 20 inches are possible, which means the southern Edwards Plateau and Rio Grande Plains face the highest catastrophic flooding risk. And rainfall rates are hitting 1 to 3 inches per hour in near-stationary training storm clusters because a series of upper-level disturbances are interacting with a massive influx of tropical moisture. Those disturbances produce highly efficient rain-making storms that keep training over the exact same spots. Margaret in Lake Charles has been watching this Texas moisture feed all night. It looks absolutely relentless because rivers including the Llano, Blanco, Nueces, and Medina are at risk of going far above bank full. And low water crossings from Del Rio to Uvalde to San Antonio are already going underwater fast. Which means if you drive around a barricade anywhere in South Texas, you are risking your life. A separate flood watch also covers west central Texas, including Tom Green, Concho, Kimball, and Mason, because that watch runs through Thursday evening with storm totals of 3 to 6 inches and isolated 9+. San Angelo and the surrounding hill country face multiple rounds before any dry air arrives at all. And here is what makes this Texas setup especially gnarly. Each new round hits already saturated ground, which means every creek and every low water crossing in south central Texas is a potential death trap. Flash flood response time is collapsing to 0. There is simply no drainage capacity remaining. High precipitable water values are fueling the most efficient rain-producing storm clusters in years. Strongest July El Niño in history. 10 to 20-inch Texas rain. Arctic air by July 21st. Stay sharp. Now shift your attention north because the heat from Montana to Michigan is absolutely off the charts. Minnesota just issued an extreme heat warning covering enormous portions of the state through Thursday, because heat index values are hitting 100 degrees with overnight lows stuck in the lower 70s, which means your body accumulates dangerous heat stress every single night without any recovery at all. And the counties included span from Douglas and Todd in the west to Chisago and St. Croix. Dale in Toledo is watching his own heat advisory. Southeast Michigan faces heat index values of 102 today, because NWS Detroit put a heat advisory in place covering Saginaw, Oakland, Wayne, Monroe, and more, which means Detroit, Lansing, Ann Arbor, and the entire Southeast Michigan corridor are baking today. And if you think that is intense, look further west to Montana and Wyoming. It gets even wilder. An extreme heat warning in dark orange covers most of western Montana, including Billings and Glasgow. And heat advisories blanket eastern Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Nebraska all at once. Frank in Springfield is watching this wall-to-wall heat map and says this is the most bonkers setup in years, because the heat dome is not sitting over one region. It is baking the entire northern tier simultaneously, which means overnight temperatures in Minneapolis, Fargo, and Bismarck refuse to drop below 70 degrees. And when your body cannot cool down overnight, cumulative heat stress builds day after day without relief. NWS says this prolonged heat wave significantly increases heat exhaustion and heat stroke risk over time. Car interiors will reach lethal temperatures in just minutes outside. Never leave anyone in unattended cars. Drink plenty of fluids, stay in air-conditioned spaces, and check on your elderly neighbors today. And limit strenuous outdoor activities to early morning or evening hours to reduce your total risk. Because the very young, the very old, and those without air conditioning face the most serious danger. So if you are anywhere from Billings to Detroit right now, please take this heat warning seriously. And here is a hazard many Americans are completely overlooking: Minnesota's air quality crisis. Because the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency just issued an air quality alert for fine particle pollution, which means the AQI is expected to hit the red or unhealthy category across much of the state. Because very heavy wildfire smoke from the Arrowhead region is spreading rapidly southward across Minnesota. Earl in western South Dakota is watching that wildfire smoke plume track south and says, "Heads up, everyone." Because hot temperatures combined with red category air quality massively worsen health impacts together. A frontal boundary will push that heavy smoke even further south into central Minnesota overnight tonight, which means Minneapolis, St. Paul, and southeastern Minnesota face additional rounds of heavy smoke Thursday. Because the Minneapolis area is already seeing fine particle pollution from large active wildfires in the north. And when heat index values near 100 combine with air quality in the red category, it is genuinely brutal. So close your windows, avoid outdoor exercise, and run air purifiers if you have them throughout today. Sensitive groups including people with asthma, lung disease, heart disease, and older adults are most at risk. Sandra in Alexandria is watching this full national picture closely, and the pattern ahead is even more alarming. Which means every hazard we have seen so far is just a setup for something even bigger ahead. Comment your city below. Tell us if you are dealing with heat, flooding, smoke, or all three today. Because all 5 of these hazards are connected to one single monster weather driver, El Nino. Strongest July El Nino ever recorded. Catastrophic Texas flooding. Minnesota smoke plus heat, and we are not done. To truly understand why all of this is happening simultaneously, you need to understand what is driving it. We are living through the strongest El Nino ever recorded specifically for the month of July in history. And forecasters believe this El Nino will well exceed the all-time record as we head into fall. Which means the warming of the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean is rewriting North American weather. Because when the tropical Pacific warms this dramatically, it injects enormous latent heat into the atmosphere. That injected heat energy fundamentally reshapes the path of the jet stream over the entire continent. And the El Nino signature is what it does to the jet stream. It splits into 2 separate streams, which means instead of one dominant westerly flow, you get a wild split, a southern and northern jet. And you can see both split jets operating simultaneously across the country on the weather maps. Because the southern jet is carrying Pacific moisture and instability straight through the southwest into Texas. And the northern jet is creating the northwest flow that drives storm energy from Canada into the northeast. Which means one jet causes flooding in the south, while the other drives severe weather farther north. This split jet dipole pattern is the textbook meteorological signature of a powerful El Nino event. Because in a normal summer, the jet stream retreats well north of the United States border and stays there. Seeing 2 clearly defined split jets simultaneously in the heart of July is historically unprecedented territory. And here is the gnarly science that explains the heat the northern jet carries warm subtropical air northward. Which means everywhere north of the northern jet gets a heat dome because the warm air piles up aloft. And everywhere south of the southern jet gets the Pacific moisture influx that produces all the flooding. So heat in Montana and flooding in Texas are not 2 separate events. They are one El Nino signature. Because the same atmospheric wave that pushes heat north also pushes rain-producing instability south. And models are showing this El Nino intensifying significantly as we enter fall and winter 2026, which means the unusual and extreme weather we are already seeing is only a preview of things to come. Forecasters say we are very likely to see weather patterns we have simply never seen before because of this. And the most dramatic example of that is what both major models are now showing for next week. Comment your city below. Which of these hazards has you most concerned today? And let us know which city you want us to cover in detail going forward. So let us walk through exactly how this pattern evolves day by day through July 21st and beyond. Wednesday the 15th looks nearly identical to today, with the southern jet still very dominant nationwide, which means additional rounds of flooding rain continue across west central Texas and the deep south. Thursday the 16th shows a less organized pattern, but both jets remain factors for much of the country. Friday the 17th is when the pattern really starts shifting, with the northern jet becoming more dominant, which means Friday brings storm chances across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Rockies, and Texas, and Oklahoma. Saturday the 18th is when the eastern seaboard truly wakes up and gets serious about severe weather, because the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Southeast all see active thunderstorms Saturday. And the four corner states, Wyoming and Montana, also see quite a bit of thunderstorm activity Saturday. Sunday the 19th keeps that eastern corridor extremely active, with four corners and upper Midwest also joining in. And by Sunday, the northern jet dips into the northeast cooler conditions coming for the Great Lakes. Monday the 20th intensifies things dramatically, with a stronger low developing directly over the Great Lakes. Here is where the story takes a major turn. Both big models are now in full agreement. By Tuesday, July 21st, a massive ridge builds in the west while an enormous trough dives into the east. Because in summer, you almost never see clearly defined wave amplitude in the jet stream like this. Typically from May through September, the jet stream stays well north of the border and causes minimal disruption. But this pattern is showing something that is essentially not supposed to happen in the heart of July, which means both the European model and the GFS are now in excellent agreement on this dramatic setup. And when two major models agree this strongly at this range, forecasters take it very seriously indeed. Because the pattern shows a classic positive PNA signal ridge west warm, trough east cold in summer, which means Arctic air is going to flood into the eastern United States around July 21st and beyond. When forecasters say Arctic air, they mean air that originated in the Arctic region, not in Canada. Because Arctic air is a completely different and more stable and denser air mass than what we typically see. And it does not mean 32 degrees or snow. It simply means temperatures crashing far below what is seasonal, which means if your average high is 80 degrees, you could see a high near 65 or lower. Because 10 to 15 degrees below normal means your summer suddenly feels like early October for several days. And the GFS is showing some areas 20 to 25, even 30 degrees below normal as a high, which means if your average July high is 80, then 30 below normal puts your high near 50 degrees. That is a summer high temperature that is flat out absurd. It defies every expectation for mid-July, because the atmosphere is going to produce a deep amplified ridge trough pattern unlike anything typical for summer. And Arctic air colliding with warm, humid eastern air is going to fuel dangerous, severe weather too, which means the cold front associated with this trough will likely produce widespread severe weather outbreak conditions. And here's the wild part. Models show not just one Arctic intrusion, but potentially two in a row, because a second Arctic air mass may follow close behind the first one, possibly even more intense, which means late July 2026 could see back-to-back Arctic intrusions into the eastern United States. And models showing this level of agreement this far out is something that significantly raises confidence. So let us walk through what all of this means specifically for major American cities in the coming days. Starting in Texas, San Antonio and Austin remain under life-threatening flood risk through Thursday evening, because every additional round of rain on already saturated ground equals catastrophic flash flooding potential. Dallas and Fort Worth face additional severe storm rounds through Wednesday as the southern jet keeps fueling storms. Houston residents, upstream river runoff from the hill country is heading your way through Thursday morning. And tell us which Texas city you are in. Comment below and describe what you are seeing. Moving north to Minneapolis and St. Paul, these cities face a triple threat of heat, smoke, and storms because the extreme heat warning runs through Thursday evening, with heat index values near 100 degrees. And the air quality alert runs through Friday morning, meaning Minneapolis faces two overlapping emergencies. Chicago faces heat advisory conditions Wednesday and elevated severe weather risk as we head into the weekend. Detroit and the southeast Michigan corridor bake under a 102 heat index today before storms arrive Friday. Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay all face the heat advisory and then the weekend severe weather threat. Cleveland and Pittsburgh are both in line for the Great Lakes Storm Complex arriving Monday the 20th. And then the Arctic trough arrives Tuesday the 21st, bringing a dramatic temperature crash to the Ohio Valley. Columbus and Cincinnati could see high temperatures drop from the mid-80s all the way down to the mid-60s. Washington, D.C. and Baltimore face Friday severe weather risk, and then the dramatic Arctic cold blast July 21st. Philadelphia and New York City should prepare for Friday storms, then a historic Arctic cold crash July 21st. Raleigh, Charlotte, and Atlanta face heat returning near 100 degrees by Thursday and Friday before weekend storms. And Florida faces the most active period in weeks, repeated rounds of rain from the stalled Gulf pattern. Miami, Orlando, and Tampa face above normal rainfall into next week with afternoon and evening thunderstorms daily because the Gulf is staying open for business, pumping moisture, humidity, and afternoon storm fuel into Florida. And Raleigh, Greenville, and Spartanburg could see heat index values approaching 100 again by this coming Saturday. Meanwhile, the Gulf tropical development that was being watched has taken an important turn in the pattern, because the trough diving into the eastern U.S. is going to scoop up that Gulf energy and absorb it, which means instead of an organized tropical system, the southeast gets repeated rounds of heavy moisture rain. And the European ensembles are watching a broad tropical wave near the Cape Verde Islands and Lesser Antilles. But El Niño's screaming jet stream combined with Saharan dust is likely to prevent significant development, which means the primary tropical threat is heavy rainfall from the stalled Gulf moisture pattern itself. And forecasters note this is one of the slowest starts to hurricane season in the past 8 years. Because El Niño is doing its job, shredding tropical development before storms can consolidate and organize. But history shows that below normal seasons can still produce devastating storms when your guard is down. Which means Florida residents cannot relax just because tropical development looks suppressed for now. So here's what you need to do right now, regardless of which hazard is affecting your region today. If you are in South Texas, stay away from all low water crossings and do not drive through floodwater. If you are in Minnesota or Michigan, get out of the heat. Monitor air quality and check on neighbors. And if you are in the East, mark July 21st on your calendar as a major weather watch day. Tell us your city in the comments and tell us which forecast concerns you the most going forward. And let us know which region you want us to dig into in more depth in the upcoming videos. Strongest El Niño ever recorded for July, driving all of this simultaneously. 10 to 20 inches isolated rainfall still possible west of San Antonio through Thursday. Arctic air dropping temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below normal in the east by July 21st. Strongest El Niño, 10 to 20 inches. Texas Arctic air by July 21st. Pay attention.